Your question is, what would his prospects be?
Do you feel like 92 might be a little too early, 96 might be a year by which time health care and family leave and other things will have emerged?
You don't run for a presidency based upon, even as broad as the problem of health care is, and as broad as the problem of families and children is, you don't run for the presidency on those issues. You don't run on trade. You don't run on energy policy. You run on a whole approach to the presidency, a proactive agenda approach. Health care, I think, has been moved vastly forward. I think I know that the president has been now forced to be engaged, I think, again, a lot through the work that I've done, engaged in the process of what he's going to come up with about health care, which so far is absolutely nothing, but he's defensive about it. And, you know, he's saying in the Rose Garden, look, stop criticizing me for not having a domestic agenda. Let it work. Give it time. Well, that's the first hint that George Bush knows that the people are closing in. Yes, sir.
Senator, if you're presidential timber, then wouldn't you have started your planning process a year ago? I mean, you had to have known that you were considering the presidency, and now you're saying that you just didn't quite have enough time.
Well, there are two problems with the question, which had to do with why didn't I start this a year ago. And the first problem was that I was running for re-election to the United States Senate, and that ended in November. It was good as a race. I won well, but it was a race that I fought hard to win. So there, obviously, I was precluded from so doing at that time. And then secondly, I have not been, as I indicated, over the course of my life, been planning everything on the basis of running for the presidency of the United States. And the fact that really I just edged into that in the spring, and then really in May really took out after it to explore it. Not to do it, but to explore it. I'd open the doors. That's all I ever said. And yes, I said I wanted to be president. Yes, I said I thought I could beat George Bush, and I think I could. But there's a larger question. This whole thing is not just about the chase, not just the mechanics and the process of getting to be the nominee or getting to be the person who gives the inaugural. The fundamental question ought to be, and has to be in my own mind, governance. Are you ready at this particular point to fully say that you are ready to govern America with full thought beforehand? And I cannot say that at this point. Yes.
Going back to the health care issue. You had mentioned that health care is starting to recover. Example, I mean, of a crisis is this state, of course. What I'd like to know is the health care issue critical to other states as well? Is this something that's a sign of the time that something could drastically happen to health care, the industry, insurance industry in particular, like the life insurance industry?
Yeah, I think that the whole healthcare crisis, whether it's the insurance industry and the way it is very mechanically selects out bad risks, I think it's emblematic of the stress and the lack of attention through the lack of attention, therefore the stress on not just Americans that don't have health care coverage, but middle-class Americans generally who have health care coverage, but who are one pink slip, one slip on the front stairs away from being without any health insurance whatsoever. I mean, I think the health care crisis, which dwarfs the Pentagon in terms of its budget consequences for our country, and which is going to do so at a much greater rate. I mean, the Pentagon budget is gradually going to be going down. The health care budget is enormously going to be going up. It dwarfs every other sector of our national domestic life financially, and I think in moral terms and human terms. But you know, that is where I have to do my work in the Senate, where I sit in the Finance Committee, where I've chaired the Pepper Commission. I've now set up an educational foundation which is going to be pursuing health care, keeping the pressure on the White House, the Congress, the media, the American people. I'll continue the work that I've been fighting in the Senate and fighting, frankly, I think very effectively. Health care, trade policy, energy, families, and a lot of other things.
To get a Democrat into the office to say, help this crisis out? Or is this a party matter, not being done to address this issue by the Republicans?
Well, you know, my anger and my disgust, frankly, it's anger, you know, but anger sort of sits there, and then it's it refines itself into a real, just a repugnancy, a sense of disgust at how it is that the Reagan-Bush years have just literally cut the middle class adrift, that they have just bent over backwards, and I use this word, irrationally adored the rich. They have done that. I do not understand what it is they had in mind. I think I unfortunately know what it is they had in mind. But it's been destructive to America, and worse, they have paid no attention to preparing America for the next century. In other words, what are our critical technologies? Where do we have to be economically? What are the priorities domestically and internationally that we have to address, and in what order? And what are we doing now in terms of human investment and other things to prepare for that next century? They seem to just assume that it's going to walk right through their lives in a very happy fashion. And in the case of Ronald Reagan and George Bush, it may very well do so. But in the case of the people of West Virginia and middle-class Americans all across this country, that's not the way it works.
What kind of scenario do you see happening in 1996 and your feelings then?
Well, in 1996, what I will be doing is supporting the re-election of the Democratic president. You go ahead.
Are we right to assume that from what you say, that if a Democrat doesn't win next year, you're going to immerse yourself in the years after that rather than 3 months, getting ready to govern and getting ready to win in a campaign?
You know, it isn't just a matter of reading books. It's not a matter of talking to economists. It's not a matter of trips to Japan or Bonn. That's not the point. The presidency is so huge. It's global. It's global within the boundaries of this nation, and it's obviously global in the entire universe. It is the one position in this world that everybody else looks to. And it's not a matter of having to spend a certain number of months or a certain number of years. It is a matter of having to spend sufficient time grappling with those problems, not the campaign, not the mechanics of getting there, not the chase, but the job, governance, of dealing with that, of thinking through how you would plan your administration out, how you would focus and in what order a proactive agenda. That trips off the lips easily enough, but in doing it and preparing for it, it cannot be done in 3 months. Had I started a year ago, I think I would be here saying something else, but I didn't.
Well, do you figure you'll do that if a Democrat is not elected next year?
Well, I don't hold that view. I think George Bush is falling. I think the American people are wising up to him. He is now consistently below 50% in his reelect numbers, which if you're a senator, for example, that's not a good position to be in. I mean, that's just classic political analysis. So I think George Bush has a popularity that's up here, but has a trust that is well below 50%. And the American people are now telling us very clearly, and they were telling me in 22 states, that they think the country's going in the wrong direction.
One more question.
Senator, if it's not trips to Japan or reading a book, what is it that prepares one to be president, in your view?
I tried to describe that. It's personal, it's deep, it's incredibly important, and it involves time. What it is not is 3 months, and in fact, even within those 3 months, as I think back, I mean, I was doing about 4 states a weekend. That is not exactly, cerebral content, nor is the presidency a cerebral matter. I mean, if the foreign policy, the domestic agenda, the economic policy, those things I have a lot of familiarity with over a long period of my life, and a period of my life which precedes the public part of my life. It's a sense of exactly how you see the presidency. You've got to live with it. You've got to sleep. You've got to wake up in the middle of the night. It's got to work its way through your system. It's a sacred pursuit. It is not a chase. It's something I take seriously, and something which one of these days I will probably get to. Thank you all very much.